What is up, my friends? Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be taking a look at some basics of music notation. So this is for the absolute beginner in case you're a musician who really has no idea how to read music. That's totally fine. A lot of us are not classically trained and just haven't really gone through the proper education of knowing how to read music, which is totally fine. But if you are interested, I want to show you the basics today. I have this basic page pulled up. I found this website called musicnotes.com, which is actually something I do share with my students quite a bit, if when they're curious about music notation. So we're gonna go through this very quickly. You can rewatch this, of course, as many times as you want, and hopefully that gives you a sense of how to start reading some basic notes and stuff like that. But before we really do that, though, I want to give you my music theory fundamentals guide. It's totally free, but basically it goes over the concepts that are really fundamental to really understand when writing music and composing music, because a lot of the time we're writing music, but we don't really know why something works. We just do it because it just sounds good to our internal ear, right? But it is always nice to have some solid fundamental knowledge of music theory. So in case you're interested in that, you want to just brush up your knowledge a little bit, I want to give that to you totally free. Just click the first link in the box below and it will take you straight there as my thank you for watching this video. So let's talk about music reading a little bit, and then we'll kind of apply it to an example here for some sight reading, which is always a good idea to do anyway. Usually when you read sheet music, you're going to see it in either treble clef or bass clef, usually for either the right hand or the left hand, high notes or low notes. But even before we do that, we have to look at what the staff is in the first place, these 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you see there's 5 lines and there's 4 spaces in between. We call those lines and spaces, right? Very simple. And then when you see this large symbol here on the left of this staff, we call it a staff, these 5 lines and 4 spaces. There's basically 2 main clefs you need to worry about: treble clef or bass clef. And treble clef is kind of the higher one. It basically represents the higher notes. And so usually we would equate that with the right hand as a pianist, or if you're thinking about another instrumentalist, probably the higher notes on that instrument, right? Some instruments are literally read in only the treble clef, and some instruments are only in the bass clef just due to the registers and the octaves that they're constrained within. But anyway, in piano you have both the treble clef and the bass clef. So in the treble clef you have, again, these 5 lines and 4 spaces, and each one of these lines and spaces represents a certain note on the piano or in music, right? So from bottom to top you would read it as E, G, B, D, and F, and it basically ascends in the alphabet. So there's basically the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A through G, that are being used in music: A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So if we start the first line as E, then the next space would be F, and then the line after that would be G, because you're counting forward in the alphabet. And then after G, you basically go back to A and continue A, B, C, D, E, F. And then if you want to go past the staff, you can certainly do that. Then the space above the F would be G. Then you can add additional small lines called ledger lines to represent notes outside of the staff that exist on the instrument, basically. Now, an easy way to remember these lines and spaces is every good boy deserves fudge and face. Okay, so EGBDF, you can just use this sentence here to remember that, and then face, FACE, represents the 4 spaces within. So if we look at the treble clef over here on the first sight reading exercise, here's our treble clef, right? And some people also call it the G clef, because the treble clef in a way kind of looks like an uppercase G if you look at it, a G right there. So the treble clef actually shows us that this little curve, right, is around the G line. So some people think about the second line as a landmark for themselves, and I think that's a pretty good way to do it. Whatever line or space you can use as an easy memory key, definitely do that for yourself. So most people know that G is kind of the second line on the treble clef. And we always count lines from bottom to top. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, by the way, and spaces 1, 2, 3, and 4, as we saw up here. Okay, so here we have the 5 lines and the 4 spaces in between. And so that means this first note over here on the first line would be an E for every, right, over here. And so when you start reading these notes, you can just look, is it on a line or a space? Okay, if it's on a line, then it's going to be one of these 5 letters. If it's on a space, it's going to be one of these 4 letters, and so on and so forth. Now, just for reference, this note right here below the treble clef, right here sitting on its own little line, we actually call this middle C. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. And so if you look at the bottom line, which is E, right, for every, if we go back up here, every, you go down to the space just below the line, we call that D because we're going down, so we're going backwards in the alphabet, and you go down one more and you get to C. Now this is significant because middle C is actually the midway point between treble and bass clef, which we'll get to in a second. So if you write one note with its own little line below the treble clef or the treble staff, you get middle C. If you go one line above the bass clef or bass staff with a note on it, then that's also middle C. And it's the same note on the piano, the C right in the middle. Okay, just a little detail there. But let's move on to the bass clef. So the bass clef have the same idea. So 5 lines and 4 spaces. And here we can think of it as good boys do fine always, or good boys deserve fudge always. And then the spaces in between would be all cows eat grass. So if you look here at this first note right here, you see it's on a space because the round part of the note is literally sitting in the space, the second space. And what note is it? Well, it's second space, so all cows, C. And that's it, is as easy as that. For in terms of a landmark, like what can you use as a memory key, like which note? Some people use F. So because the bass clef almost looks like a capital F, like F, there, the 2 dots surrounding the 4th line is F, as you can see. So the word fine or the word fudge would be your memory key there. So some people remember the F in the bass clef, which is the 4th line, and then the G in the treble clef, which is the 2nd line. All right. All right, let's move on to some note values. Now, the most basic note value you're going to learn is the quarter notes. So even here, you see there's a whole bunch of these black ovals. These are called quarter notes. And usually they're worth 1 beat each. So you can see that each one has a number within or below 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I was to clap each of those notes, each of those beats, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the half note is basically double that. It's 2 beats. So if I was to clap those notes, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you see that I'm holding my hands together for 2 seconds or 2 beats, whereas the whole note is 4 beats. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And you would basically hold that note on your instrument for 4 beats as well with that counting in your mind. So for example, if I was to, let's say if I was to sing the right hand here or the treble clef notes, these are all quarter notes, which are 1 beat each. And this note over here is a whole note, as you can see. So that's 4 beats. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? So I sang the C for 4 beats, while each of these notes were 1 beat each. Okay, then sometimes you'll also see dots next to the notes, which basically indicate that note plus half of its value. So if it's a dotted half note, then you would have a half note, which is 2 beats plus half of 2, which is 1. So essentially it's like adding a quarter note to that note. So in reality, you get 3 beats. So it'd be 1, 2, 3. That's kind of how you differentiate between non-dotted notes and dotted notes. So just to recap, the dot adds half that note's value. So if it's a dotted half note, then it would be 2 plus 1, which is 3. All right. Then if you want to go smaller than quarter notes, smaller than 1 beat each, then you would have 1/8 notes, which are half a beat each, and 16th notes, which are a quarter of a beat each. So naturally, you would need 2 1/8 notes to make 1 quarter note, right? Because 2 halves make 1. And then 4 16th notes would make 1 quarter as well. And in terms of how fast they are, the 1/8 notes are double the speed of the quarter notes, and the 16ths are double the speed of the 1/8 notes, right? Or quadruple the speed of the quarter notes. So if my quarter notes are going 1, 2, 3, 4, then my 1/8 notes are going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the 16ths would be 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and that kind of thing. So you can see how when you start to have more lines on the notes, then the faster they go essentially. And that's really important as well. So here's a little recap of these different note types, and then you can have the equivalent rests as well: whole, half, quarter, 1/8, and 16th. Now, really quickly about time signatures, you're going to see them usually at the beginning of a piece of music, only one time on the first line. And the top number, so there's 2 numbers, right? And each one represents something pretty important. Whatever is shown in the treble clef is most likely going to be the very same in the bass clef. So the top number will always tell us the number of beats within the bar, within the measure. So if it's a 4 on the top, then we'll expect to see 4 beats within the measure. 1, 2, 3, 4 before a bar line, and then it starts a new bar. And bars essentially just help us group music to make it easier to read, basically. So yeah, that's what the top 4 means. And then the bottom number will tell us the value of each of those beats, like the type of note, quarter, half, whole, whatever, what type of note gets each of those beats. So if it's a 4 on the bottom, that actually tells us that a quarter note gets 1 beat. And so each of these 4 beats is worth a quarter note. So that's why you see there's 4 quarter notes in the bar. If it's a 2 on the bottom, then we would expect to see 4 half notes in this bar. If it was an 8 on the bottom, then we would expect to see 4 eighth notes in this bar with a little tail, for example, or you can see them joined together. So the number on the bottom tells you the value of each beat, whereas the top number tells you how many beats are in a bar. And so yeah, this 3 4, you see there's 3 beats in a bar, and each of those beats is a quarter note because that's what the 4 tells us. 1, 2, 3 quarter notes. Okay. And then a little number sometimes you'll see at the very top that will tell us how many of these notes are we going to hear in a minute, basically. All right, so if you see 60 equals quarter note or quarter note equals 60, that means you're going to hear 60 quarter notes in a minute, which is 1 quarter note per second, and so on and so forth. Let's move past that. Then we have sharps and flats really quickly. So sharps kind of look like a little hashtag, and you'll see them usually applied to the left of a note. And that basically raises a note by 1 semitone or by 1 half step. So C becomes C sharp. So C, you go up 1 note to C sharp, 1 semitone, just like that, 1 step. Whereas a flat goes the opposite direction. So if you see a flat next to the E, then you start from E, you go down 1 to the left. So just as a recap, going up on the piano means to the right and going down means to the left. All right. Then sometimes you'll have the natural, which looks like a little box with a line up and down. I think of it as an L and then a 7. But essentially, the natural cancels out the sharp or the flat. So sometimes in a bar, you'll have 2 Ds, but you want the first one to be flat, but the second one you don't want it to be flat. So you would cancel that flat by putting in a natural next to the second D. Because by default, if you don't have a natural there, then that flat will actually apply to every single D in the bar after the first one. Or if it's a sharp, same idea. So if you see a C, then a D sharp, then the next D, if there's nothing next to it, then it's going to be D sharp as well. So if you want to cancel that flat or sharp, you need a natural there. Okay? That's a lot of information there. All right, we're almost there. Let's talk about key signatures really quickly. So these are basically a collection of sharps or flats that you see at the beginning of a piece of music. Usually every single line will have these. So in this case, you see on these examples, you see no sharps or flats next to the treble and bass clefs like you see here. The reason is because C major, the C major scale, is the only one that has no sharps and flats. So if you play the C major scale on your instrument from C to C, you're not going to have any sharps and flats on that scale. Every other scale has at least 1 sharp or 1 flat within it. And so if you wanted to read that, you can certainly do that. But kind of memorizing what the key signatures are and what keys they belong to is very important. And that's pretty much it. So sight reading is really good because it helps you to apply these concepts all together. If we take one more look here, I'm going to spread this out just a little bit. All of these sight reading examples in this PDF, I believe, are written in C major or C position, at least. I'll zoom back in here. But it's a really good idea to really start going through and see if you can start sight reading this. Sight reading just basically means you look at it, you kind of pretend to play it on your instrument, in this case, the piano, and then try it out, keeping everything in mind. So first of all, I would look at the key signature. I don't see anything there, so I know it's in the key of C major. Then I look at the time signature. I know there's 4 beats in a bar, and each beat is a quarter note, so that's fine. 1, 2, these 2 eighth notes add up to create a quarter, so that's 3 quarters, and then this last quarter is a quarter, right? And then you start reading the notes. And rather than trying to memorize what every single note is on the staff, like, okay, that's a C, okay, now that's a G, that's an E, that's an F, that's not very effective, right? I mean, over time, you'll start to realize what the different notes are. However, I think it's better to start recognizing the distances between the notes, the intervals, okay? So for example, whenever you step from one note to another, if the two notes are on different locations, vertically, then the interval is going to be a certain number. So for example, if we go from this E to this F, we call this a second. So, when you're going from E to F, you're counting both letters, E, F. That's what creates a second. If I go from this G to the E, right, then that's a third because G to E is 3 letters, G, F, E, or if I count backwards, E, F, G, if I count up, E, F, G, right? How about this? Middle C, so C up to G, C, D, E, F, G. You want to count all the letters, and that gives you an interval of a fifth, okay? So what you want to do is start identifying what the different intervals look like, and then use that to sight read on your instrument, essentially. Because when you're sight reading, you don't want to be reading every single note all the time. You want to kind of use a combination of note reading along with interval reading at the same time. So if I look at this, I know that's a fifth, that's a third, second, second, fourth, fourth, second, second, unison, fifth, fifth, third, second, second, fourth, fourth, second, unison, second, fifth, unison, fifth, second, second, third, and fifth, for example. And the larger it gets, obviously, it's a little harder to read. However, it helps a lot when it comes into just reading music at a more advanced level, But anyway, those are kind of the very basics of music notation. If you're interested in kind of learning more about, just basic notation, you can definitely visit this website, musicnotes.com, how to read sheet music, But if you really want to learn more about the fundamentals of music theory, if what I was talking about really didn't make sense in terms of like the actual concepts themselves, then I want to give you again my music theory fundamentals guide. It kind of goes over the very essentials you need to know to really start writing music and putting names to what you're doing, okay? Because it's very easy to just write by ear, and a ton of people do this, but I would like it if you also understood some of what you were doing as well. Just, be able to put a name to those actions or those notes that you're putting on paper or playing into your DAW, right? So it's totally free. So just click the link below. It'll take you straight there. You can download it for free right away as my gift to you for watching this video. Any case, let me know if you have any questions. I really appreciate you watching this video, checking it out, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.